Hi everyone. My name's Jessica Olivieri, but before we introduce ourselves, this is Nancy Denis. I'm just going to do my acknowledgement of countries. So I'm sitting on Bidjigal land of the Eora Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and future, and just acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and this always will be and always was Aboriginal land. Nancy, do you want to do your own acknowledgement?
I would love to, thank you. I am on Gadigal land. I pay my respects to past, present and future elders. I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. And let's do this.
I wanted to just begin by audio describing ourselves. I think it's a really great practice. That's one of the practices that have emerged out of COVID. And, we're in a space that is a space that people have been crying out for accessibility from the disability sector. So just to make sure that we're being inclusive of those people, I am a pale-skinned woman with short brown hair. I have red lipstick on, and I'm sitting in front of a very bright, multicolored, swirling painting.
I am a Black woman. I have dreadlocks. They're short. They come like just past my ears. I'm wearing Kuri shell earrings. I've got a bit of gloss on. I have a white scarf, a dark navy blue jacket on. I'm sitting next to a fridge with a white Jesus behind my head. There's a mirror and some plants in the Himalayan salt in the far, your right, my left corner. And my hair is like a little mount, like a little fountain on top of my head. Like I put it up in like a little fountain, and I've got really cool rings on.
Thanks, Nancy.
Like a white background as well, but quite colourful.
I wanted to also just acknowledge that it seems to me easy to forget that we're living in a moment now that is not normal. Not that normal was great before this, but we are living in a moment where we've got a pandemic happening. So some people right now might not be able to leave their house. And also we've got multiple layers of crisis happening within that. So acknowledging as well that right now there's a mainstream consciousness that many in the BIPOC community have been calling out for a long time around the Black Lives Matter movement. And I just wanted to acknowledge that that is also foreshadowing this conversation. Nancy, before I get to you to describe your practice, I thought it might be nice to preface that with a quote from Audrey Lorde. And if anyone doesn't know who Audrey Lorde is, Google her and read her stuff. She's an incredibly important feminist African-American writer, poet. So she says in one of the many amazing things she says is, if I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies for me and eaten alive. So with that in mind, Nancy, would you like to describe yourself right now and your artistic practice?
I am a human being with a spirit. I'm an artist of various disciplines, a jack of all trades, master of none. I have no degrees or any kind of paperwork really that would say that, according to the white man and his system, that I can do what I do, but I do it anyway. My discipline really comes from me trying to understand my experience as a human being, as a spirit residing in a human form, just trying to live and thrive and survive all at the same time. A lot of my work comes from me just trying to understand myself and understand my surroundings without feeling crazy, really. And having the support and the love and the strength of my ancestors all the time. I recognize and understand that it is a privilege for me to be alive right now, and it came through great sacrifice from my ancestors, and also the deities and orishas who are my guides in this plane. And yeah, I would describe myself also as like a warrior. I mean, yeah, I'm an activist, but I think anyone who's conscious and alive and you can read and look around would be an activist, because you're just like, what is going on? I feel like we're living in crazy town, and it's and you're just trying to like make it less crazy, make it more nurturing and loving. And you know, it's every single person's birthright to feel loved and to feel nurtured, and to, you know that life is the lesson, life is the university, like you learn from life in its in the engagement of life. So yeah.
Yeah. Articulate as always. And I would say I've described you as a quadruple threat, but there's probably a few more that you could add to that.
Someone said a Rolodex the other day, and I was like, yeah, all right, I'll take that.
Rolodex, that's nice. I just wanted to also say that I am the artistic director at Urban Theatre Projects, and I'm very privileged to be in that position. We are an organisation that's been going since 1979. We're based in Western Sydney and prioritise access. That is access for artists to develop new work. And then we partner with other organisations in order to present work, and access is a very much a forefront of mind when we are presenting work, and it's embedded within the process. So that's just what I'd say about that. So I thought, let's just start big, because we are in this moment of immense change. And we should acknowledge that NIDA is a part of this change and has been at the forefront of that conversation, which I think is really exciting, in addressing how, you know, institutions can be more inclusive. So, I mean, we all have our wish list of change. And I was wondering, Nancy, if you had, let's say, 5 things that you could change right now that you feel like you could achieve maybe as well. Because I think the really important thing to remind ourselves is that change is possible. And there's a lot of there's a lot of conversation around that is to the opposite of that change isn't possible, but change happens. Change has happened since we began, and will continue to happen, and we, I think, have to take responsibility for the way things change. So Nancy, if you could change 5 things, they can be small or they could be big, what would they be?
When you say change 5 things, because that's quite big, do you mean in the world? Do you mean like right now, like in terms of NIDA, the institute, and myself being a person who wished that they wanted to go there, but then realized very quickly that would be the worst decision?
I mean in the context, I mean in the context of the world right now, where we're at this moment of precipice where we're all in a holding pattern. Right. And when we come out of this, I guess, what do you want to see us bring with us from this time?
Okay.
And what do you want to see us chuck in the bin?
Okay, cool. So 5 things, limit it to 5 things. Okay, so I guess one would be that, geez, okay, this one's quite big. I'll try and explain it as good as I can. But the first thing would be like everyone understood racism and understood that racism is an illogical idea with real life consequences, and it affects every single one of us. Obviously it affects one more than the other, but in saying that, you know, like people's heart chakras need to open up a hell of a lot more and realize that the change is going to come from the pain we're all going to feel. Not all, because some of us are constantly in pain, but for the, you know, the more privileged, or, and I quote white, I only quote white because I obviously know a lot of white people who aren't supremacists. But like, you know, that opens up and you take in that pain and realize, yeah, there was a lot of pain caused, and accepting that pain in order to move forward. There needs to be a plan. We can't just keep wishing for things, saying things are going to change, but it's like, you know, planning change helps, because then you can count on your fingers how many years it's going to take after you implement things. So that's 1. 2, that we not just take out and dismantle and get rid of, but we destroy the idea of capitalism within the arts system. I mean, I feel like places like Hollywood and like the UK and whatever, you know, they've monopolized us as artists. You know, they've made us fight amongst each other to make sure we get to the top of that hill so we can be at Sundance and just be like, we're so cool. It's like, that was never the purpose of art ever. I mean, you know, if we look beyond the Greek and the Roman way of writing down and being like the fourth wall, four walls and the stars, I'm like, art was a way of communicating how the plants grow, how the stars work, how your heart works, how to love and respect your elders, how to know when you're at a song line. That's music, that's art, that's all of that. And I feel like every single individual person on this planet is an artist in various degrees. So implementing that and understanding that and nurturing that. The third thing would be mental health, making it as famous as sports stars. Yeah. Mental health, every single person, and it shouldn't be something that we can't talk about. It shouldn't be like a secret thing. It should be completely open up, because we're all just having a human experience and trying to live. The fourth thing would be, as artists and as people, I think everyone should be political. Every single person, everyone should know what their constitutional rights are wherever the heck you are, because that's just knowing what's going on, really. Knowing that a legislation is a very strong suggestion, it is not law. If everyone knew that, I think a lot of things would change quite quickly. That, and then I guess the last thing would be like, I don't know, would it be okay to say like the last thing would be like that everyone also understands that love is love is love is love is love is love is love.
I think that would be nice.
How's there go?
That's a pretty extensive list. I like that. I like that. I like that version of the future. Yeah. So I guess with all of that in mind, and acknowledging that this is a really emotionally draining time, and that we are all in this state, and we're experiencing that differently on an emotional level. What does that mean right now then for you to be making this work within sort of the midst of a multi-layered crisis? How has that changed the way you think about, because obviously you're working on a solo work with UTP at the moment, so you've been going through this process with us, but I imagine does it feel different to making work pre-COVID?
I guess it does, because, you know, as we all know, about 4 weeks ago, Black Lives Now mattered. It was like, you know, people all realize that. I guess it's easier for my work now, because my work prior to COVID, I was like a little bit scared, because it's very like, my work is like me talking about my Black experience growing up here in Australia, but not just my Black experience, also like as an immigrant, being like, you know, I was born here, but I'm not from here, which is one of the lines in it, because it's like, oh, as a Black person, sure, you could agree with that. But you know, as an immigrant, you would agree with that, because I'm Black, and like this country is actually a Black country with a lot of white people on it. So like, actually, I belong here more than I ever realized, and was always like in this, like, I'm Black, but am I the wrong kind of Black to be here? Blah, blah, blah. You know, realizing that I come from a warrior ancestry, it's like, no, I'm definitely supposed to be here because I'm here for the fight. Let's go. So from pre-COVID to now, it feels easier. It feels like my work was made for COVID. It's almost like I predicted it with my work. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to do this work, and don't worry, by 2020, people will get it. It won't be so terrifying for people to hear it, because they'll be like, no, this makes sense. Yeah, shit's been going on. Like, yeah, we were all kind of born in a war zone, if you really think about it. A silent one, an insidious one. And we're totally allowed to talk about it, sing about it, scream about it, express about it, because that's all we're doing. So I feel like and also working with UTP, it's like the most nurturing, like most like, hey, artist, you've got an idea? Yeah, let's work on that together. You've got as much time as you need, my darling. And I'm like, get out of here. Thank you, UTP. Thank you very much. I feel very safe with UTP prior to COVID and now, but now after COVID, I'm like, no, I feel even more brave and less, like fear is not really a factor anymore, because pre-COVID, I guess people were really used and comfy to their little privileged little nook and being like, things are all going to work out. Unpredictability is not part of my life. Where it's like, well, if you're an artist or a person of color or a person within a minority, I'm like, unpredictability is part of your MO. So actually COVID for me has also felt like this really strange school holiday, but I don't have to go to school in a couple of weeks. And yeah, but for my work, it's been actually quite validating. Like without COVID, I think I still would have, like say COVID didn't happen, the work was happening, I think just in my gut, I'd still have that like knotting of fear being like, am I really about to say what I'm about to say? Am I really going to let people hear that these are my actual and full on opinions in a very witty and funny way, but still very quite like in your face and being like, this is how I feel though. So yeah.
I think that's it's really interesting to think about it in that way. And I mean, the other thing that I think is really interesting is that your work will be presented online, and so that also opens up to a whole Pan-African but also BIPOC community worldwide to see the work. So there's also this kind of I mean, how do you think about you know, because you were talking just now as the idea of a white audience. So does that change for you thinking about making a work that's not for a white audience, that's for this sort of diaspora of BIPOC people that can find this work via the internet?
Well, it was always like from the very get-go when writing it, it was always for my people. And you know, I like to call it my Black journey. I was going through my Black journey where I just kind of shut down and ignored anything that was colonized or white and didn't represent me or represent where I came from. I just kind of shut that out and then just went into this work. And I guess like it's pre to COVID, it was like, I just knew that my audience was going to be more white than it was going to be Black, just because of accessibility. When it comes to how much people money-wise making. I'm not saying that there's not a bunch of IPOC people out there who've got money. Obviously, we exist and we're out there like rocking it. But we're not necessarily invited into, especially the Australian art space. We're not invited. It's not. We're not. There are when there are ads for it, or like marketing. It's not targeted at us. It's targeted at the middle class white people who've already probably got subscription to these spaces. I mean, with UTP, it's different because, you know, your whole MO from 1979 has been to, you know, reach out to the opposite of that. So, you know, I knew that within my work, there would be people like me coming to see it. But now that it's like now digitalized, it's like, oh, but now everyone can actually see it. We can really target my people. But I also, you know, when I say my people, you know, I've got cousins who are as white as you, Jess, but we're blood related. You know, we've got DNA. So there's also like, what am I even saying when I say that? You know? So when I say my people, I mean, yes, I mean my people, like my BIPOC people, but I also mean like my people, like people on the fifth dimension kind of vibration as well. Like people are like, yeah, we're all a part of the human race. And as a human race, we should always ensure that we're not being bullied and oppressed and hurt. So why wouldn't we all fight for that? It absolutely makes a lot of sense. But I also understand, you know, for instance, like, you know, I used to say, like, you know, if you grew up in Australia and you're white and your education system has been like for you, showing you that you are the shit, inside of you is going to make you think otherwise if it's really comfortable, you know. I can't, that humanity is the only thing that's going to get you out of that comfort zone to be like, oh no. And sometimes my analogy would be like, you know, we're all walking around with piles of poop everywhere, right? And it's like me as a BIPOC person, it's like, why can I smell it so hard and you can't? Kind of like thing. So it's a complicated kind of answering question because it's like so many layers, so many truths and lies existing all at once. So I think it's great that it's digitalized. I think that's not a problem for me. I think once we're allowed to tour or whatever, I'm sure we'll reassess and be like, let's go into a theater space or an outdoor space and blah, blah, blah. But in the meantime, I'm kind of like, yay, accessibility. This is great. This is beautiful.
Yeah. before we ask any more questions, just to put out there that we will take questions if you have any. You can start writing them in the Q&A spot if you feel the desire. I guess my next question sort of follows from there. It really goes to, I guess, the hierarchy that exists within theatre, particularly theatre, and the way that hierarchy has been populated racially. And I guess for me, my question is sort of, I just kind of want you to go on a rant. It's a sort of a no-brainer question, but I guess I'm really interested in hearing you talk about why self-determination is impossible, is important. Oh my God, that was very bad.
Freudian slip.
Is possible and important. And I guess, as you know, you might want to talk to the way you're working with a BIPOC team in the creation of this work. But why is that? You know, why is it important that you've got that you've got people in that structure? You know, you're working with your brother as the director. You know, why is that important?
Okay. So why is self-determination important? And why did I want to work with BIPOC teams?
Yeah, like it's about sort of like who's telling whose story, right?
Yeah, who's telling whose story? Well, yeah, okay. Well, it was important for me to work with as many BIPOC people as possible, and that's like a future thing. I'll always do that because we understand each other on a level that isn't using white man's English words. I like to call it black telepathy or something, black telepathy, because there's like an energy and like a psyche that we understand. Like I have very dark jokes that to a person who isn't a BIPOC would be like, oh God, that's horrible. But to my BIPOC friends were like, because there's a level of pain that we exist with at all times. It's something that, you know, like people call it like DNA trauma, blah, 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 blah. Totally. There's that pain, but there's also the pain of being born in a family that is Black, but then walking outside and everyone else being white. Going to your school, doing right, but coming home and the people you come home to are your people. And the pain of that and the microaggressions, you know, I only had that word microaggressions only been in my vocabulary for the last 3 years because someone told me about it. I'm like, what does that mean? I'm like, oh, I know exactly what that means now. And having...
Explain, if people in the audience don't know what that means, what microaggressions means?
A microaggression, and I'll explain it how I understand it. A microaggression is kind of like when, it's also like, it has a lot to do with white fragility as well. But a microaggression is like someone touching your hair without permission. And then when you say, don't touch my hair, they're like, what? Why can't I touch your hair? It just feels like cotton. It's so nice. I just want to touch it. And it's like, can you hear yourself? Am I a pet? Or they go, oh, your hair feels like wool. And I'm like an animal? Like, what are you saying to me? Or, for instance, in my life, oh, Nancy, you're going to audition for Lion King? Are you going to audition for Lion King? And I go, no, I don't want to. Oh, but why not? It's African. It's this. I'm like, actually, it's about animals. Are you saying that I'm an animal? Are you telling me that my whole life, training for 15 to 18 years, was all accumulated so I could go on stage and play an animal? And now you're telling me that your white daughter or your white son can't audition because they can't play an animal? That is a microaggression. Because they do it with smiles on their face and they're like really encouraging and you're like, can you hear yourself? But that's a microaggression. And then bringing it back to white fragility is that them getting upset that you brought it to their attention. Like, are you saying that I can only play an animal? And then they're like, why are you saying that? Why are you bullying me? It's like, honey, why are you bullying me and my people?
Yeah, if anyone wants to know, I think a really great book that has just been written that I think everyone, particularly white people, should read is White Tears, Brown Scars by Ruby Hamad. It's a really eloquent description of exactly what you're talking about, where there's just a disconnect between an understanding of how, I guess it's just an understanding of like the accumulative trauma and also how those microaggressions really add to that accumulative trauma.
Yeah.
But sorry, I interrupted you now twice.
Infidel is beautiful. Everyone like get that, Google it, buy it from like a bookstore. Put your money to BIPOC people, hashtag BLM. Okay. And then to self-determination. Oh my God, it's the most important thing. Self-determination is mana. Self-determination is willpower. Self-determination is ache. It's your personal magic. Yeah, it's your spirit. It's your connection to every other dimension, but from this one, where you know, Oprah called it the secret, the manifestation. Self-determination is everything. It's everything. It's what gets you out of bed in the morning, even though you're like, it's a shit day or it's a beautiful day. You need that at all times, especially as we go through institutions like NIDA, you know, that has a reputation for only BIPOC people. Like if you were a white person and you went to NIDA, your experience would still be institutionalized, but you're institutionalized in terms of like, you weren't the Kate Blanchett, and you're like, wait, well, there can only be really one Kate Blanchett, isn't it? So don't aim to be her, aim to be yourself. And then for people who are BIPOC, it's like, well, I know I'm as good as Kate Blanchett, but I'm not pale and white. Well, then self-determination comes in, because that's when you go, okay, look, if you're only going to read to me Greek books and Greek things, I'm only going to do that. I'm going to learn that because that's what you tell me. But then that self-determination, you also goes, well, I'm also going to take that, what is relevant to me, and then like throw the rest in the trash. And then I'm going to use that self-determination to research other things. It's that self-determination for you to like close your eyes, take a few breaths, meditate, and hear your ancestors whispering in your ear, being like, yeah, bitch, you got this. Where you want to go? What do you want to do? What do you need? And there is nothing in this world that you don't deserve, that you can't get. Yes, it's going to feel harder, blah, blah, blah. But at this very precious time where we're trying to dismantle that, self-determination lets you know that, yes, we're in a capitalist system like a pyramid, but you know, if you're really looking at a pyramid, it's got 4 sides and there's a base. And like the pyramid in Egypt was never to get to the point of it. It's all the works that go inside of it deep down and all that stuff. You need self-determination. Like I said, I don't have a degree. I don't have any paperwork that says that I can really do any of this, but I do it anyway. And that's, self-determination is extremely important, because it's just, you need it. Everyone needs it though, as well. Like, but I'll speak for BIPOC people. We especially need it because we are, you know, like, gosh, when I wanted to go to NIDA, you know, because obviously I wanted to go tonight. I'm still like an action nerd and I'm like, I love it. Like, I want to get through the trenches. But when I look at night, I also look at it like, oh, it's also like going for the Marines, isn't it? Like if you wanted to be a Marine or you wanted to join the Navy, that's what like going to NIDA is for BIPOC people. It's like, do you want to put yourself through that? Do you want to dredge yourself through that? Like, is this how much you love it? Is this how much you want it? Because that's really the speech you give yourself. Like, how much more are you willing to sacrifice of yourself? Because this idea of NIDA or WAPA is like, if I don't go there, then I can't do what I do. And so for all those BIPOC people who went there, I'm like, yeah, you freaking did. Yeah, it was really hard. Anya though, look at you, yeah, alumni, yeah. But also like, do you want to come over, have a cup of tea, and can we cry about it together? Because I think
so I guess, yeah, I mean, I guess it's also about how the changes are made in order to, for it to be like maybe just the reserves, rather than the Marines.
I mean, it's going to change, right? We all read the letter. It's going to change, but it's also like, how is it going to change? I'd like to see a plan list of transparency of how is it going to change? Like, how are you going to shift the staffs out and shift the staffs in? How are you going to change the work? Because here, like, it's not a rumor, but when you think about NIDA or any institution of the arts, and it goes for 3 years, all I ever heard about NIDA was in the first year, like, it's like they find out who you are. The second year, they destroy it and bring you down to rubble. And then in the third year, they build you back up and get you ready for the industry. But it's like, in that readying of the industry, do they also tell you something like, but when the cameras are off and the lights are off and the curtains go down, can you go home? What's your home like? Is it safe for you there? Because actually, home is the most important thing. If you look at the Scorseses, the Ava DuVernays, you know, those big production companies, and if you ever get the chance to work with them or you read about them, what you really start to read and realize is that these people get to go home. They have a family, they garden, they love solar panels, they are full-grown human beings. And that should always be a part of your learning, that you are a person. Art imitates life, life imitates art, blah, blah. What that really is, if you break it down, is like, you need to have a life in order to express it and create art. I think all artists of all variants, what we are so magical at doing, and especially for BIPOC people, because it comes from our DNA, right? It's like, we are these people that can hear the universe expressing itself, talking, and then we take it in, and then we like make it into art and make it into these crunchable, edible things for the masses to like eat. That's what we do. And that is a magical thing on whatever level you do, whether you are Ava DuVernay, or you're just on YouTube, or you're just on your Instagram, or you're just writing down poetry to read to your family, or you're just painting things because you're trying to understand yourself. You are amazing. You are magical. On you for doing it all the time. And if that idea can be put within institutions, and also having teachers that look like you, having work that looks like you or represents a part of you, and not feeling scared. I mean, being scared is a good thing, isn't a bad thing, but like that as well, if that can be introduced at all times, it's like, that would be really great. You know, I didn't go to NIDA because I knew I couldn't go to NIDA and work at the same time. You know, I'm a within my very small unit of family here, like I'm a Haitian woman born in this country. I have 5 members of my Haitian people here, and then there's like an outer community, but I have to be able to work. I have to be able to feed myself and feed my family. So the idea of going to NIDA, whether it's on a scholarship or not, is like, oh, I still need to provide for my family. So then it's like, well, then how does NIDA and WAPA then relook at their scholarships, like, and relook at what that looks like? Because that's, you know, for me, when I was looking at NIDA, it's like, well, I can't, as much as I really want to be able to like fight for it and go for it, I'm like, my family can't take care of me. I'm a part of my family unit in making sure we can all eat. If I go to NIDA, I'm not eating. I also am not feeding. So what kind of pressure am I putting on my family? That's not fair. I mean, just, you know, as an institution, like, just NIDA, just WAPA, there's all these, like, do you get that when you hand out scholarships and you say rules that we can't work? It's like, do you know what you're doing to our family? Do you know what we're doing to that? And yeah, you probably don't, because it's not, you didn't grow up like that, and I'm not telling you to grow up like that, but it's like, well, as an art institution, as being part of the driving force of culture in the world, y'all need to know that. Y'all need to relook at that.
I have a really beautiful question that's come through on Facebook that it really goes to what you're saying, Nancy. It's from a woman called Sienna Odd, and she says she's currently in year 12, and she's focusing on intersectional female representation within mainstream theatre. Go you. And she would love to hear your thoughts on whether or not you believe that there is a future for intersectional female performers to be equally represented in mainstream theatre, and what ways theatre companies and institutions can be more inclusive in terms of amplifying and equally representing the intersectional female voice. Amazing question.
That's an amazing question. What's her name?
Sienna.
Hey, Sienna. Yes, girl. Yes, of course there is. And do you know why? Because you said it. You just said it. I'm agreeing with it. The fact that you can say that's the beginning of the secret, the manifestation, if you can say it 100%, there is a future in terms of like equally. It's like, well, that's a really big question, really big, because that's like a lot of different things need to change, and a lot of things have to change in like an inner and then an outer. Look, I'm in that world, eh? Oh God. Yes, there is a future. That future includes new stories, more stories. At the moment, in terms of, I have to just speak on like the musical theatre world and the acting stage world. We just recycle the same old white man shit. That's annoying and it's very boring. Let's stop that. New stories, more stories, bigger stories. If we introduce bigger and more stories, then of course, because those stories will include those intersections. And also it being praised by its peers, like opening up the audience to not just the middle-aged white person, but to everyone, which is what I think the corona is doing, is forcing us to do. It's like, well, everyone has access now, needs to have access. Opening up the audience is one way. Okay, another way is like, okay, if you're doing this intersectional thing, well then you also have to, facts need to come out. Real facts need to come out about the musical theatre world in Australia and the acting stage world in Australia, like facts about the fact that it's not a safe place for intersectional women there, especially when we voice our concerns. When there are so many stories, and I won't name names of that, but there are so many stories that need to come out about the treatment of intersectional BIPOC women and people of colour who survive it and continue to do it, about when you are experiencing hardship in your life, but somehow you still come and manage to come to 8 shows in a week, but then you you speak about this to your stage manager or whatever, and they look down at you and they tell you to just suck it up, doll, and get on stage. That is disgusting. That is violence. It's emotional violence. It's psychological violence. And those facts need to come out. Change can't happen if we don't know what had happened to change. Like, yes, more stories need to come and all of that, sure. But also, let's just like out and shame out all of the people responsible for being this, like, to people of intersections who happen to work in that industry. Because we need to know what we're dealing with. We need to know what we're dealing with in order to add change. So if you're doing, Sienna, some kind of thesis, blah, 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 I would tell you to, like, if you can access them, be like, can you tell me your story if you don't mind? Or can you tell me how when you complained about something and it went all the way up, that it went all the way down and smashed you in the face and you felt like a piece of shit because your family was going through crisis, but you were forced to be at work for 8 days a week, even though your counterpart, who's a lead and white, had like 7 days off because they had a cold and that was fine. But you're actually going through some actual family crisis, but you can't because also your understudy is white and not black and you're a black person and blah, blah, blah. A great example is like Frozen, yeah? Frozen in the West End and in New York, you know, we've got a black Elsa. That's amazing. There's nothing to, like, another thing too is like, if we are going to regurgitate, which I really suggest that we don't, but we regurgitate white man's stories or white man's perspective on like black people or people of color, then why can't I play the Duchess? I've got tits, I'm a woman. If she's a woman, I've got tits. I can play the Duchess. I can put a wig on. They were all wearing wigs. In fact, black people love wearing wigs. Why can't I play the Duchess?
We have another question. And this is around allyship and the power of allyship. And the question is specifically about NIDA, but I think we could talk about it broadly around how important it is to, or if you think it's important to state, you openly state your allyship for Black Lives Matter, BLM, and in general for the BIPOC people in your life.
Allyship. If you're an ally, why do you need to scream at the freaking top of your lung that you are? Your allyship is in your doing. It's in the work that you should be doing on a day-to-day basis to break down the fact that you probably are a bit racist, because we all are. That's a really great song in some kind of musical. Everyone's a little bit racist sometimes. Doesn't mean we go around committing hate crimes, which is true. Of course, everyone is a little bit racist because we grew up in Western, like we were all under the doctrine of Western and colonization, like ideology. So everyone is racist. So if you're an ally, why you need a tattoo? Why you need a hashtag? Why do you need to do that? Your allyship should be within your actions. And some of those actions requires you to not be the one talking in the room. Sometimes it requires if you can write a paycheck, give it to them, and then walk away and not tell all your friends that you did it. That's true allyship to me. Like, you don't need to say it. You should know you're an ally. And it also means that when you wake up in the morning or you're just going about your day, that you read some things about history. Like, for instance, did you know, not just here in Australia, but also in Haiti, one of the things that colonizers loved to do was bury children, little black children, up to their heads and then kick it like a football. And the bet was, how far can you kick it while they were alive? I just said that. Does that make you feel uncomfortable? Well, God, darling, if it makes you feel uncomfortable, how do you reckon it makes me feel knowing that's a fact about my people? So allyship would be like, don't cry in front of me, honey, if that upsets you. That's the work you need to do by yourself at your home. That's when you call up your counselor, you call up your psychologist. Like, I'm crying today because I learned something that is true and factual about my best friend who happens to be black. That's allyship. Allyship is like me and my best friend. I have my bestest friend in the whole wide world. I didn't speak to her for 3 years because I was going through my black journey and she just didn't get it. She just didn't get it because as far as she's concerned, she's been my best friend forever. And she's like, I just didn't see your color. And then I said to her quite recently, well, that's a problem, darling. That's a real problem because you're my best friend. And the reason why I couldn't talk to you for 3 years is because I was going through my black journey and you were saying some horrible, really rude things to me, like, come on, girl, get it together. I'm like, sorry.
Nancy, can you talk about, this journey in relation to the work that you're making? And I think it would be really nice to talk about M'ap Boule and how you've come to that as this kind of seed or core of the driving of this work.
Okay, so M'ap Boule is, it's spelled M-A-P space B-O-U-L-E with like a little on the top there. M'ap Boule in literal translation means I'm on fire, which just makes so much sense to me because I came to that. The first name of it was Jagun Jagun, which means warrior, warrior in Yoruba. So that's super important to me, but it's also super important to my most recent ancestors and to the 1804 Revolution of Haiti. Because in 1804, we did quite literally set fire to the island in order to, get rid of the French and Napoleon and all them things. We were like, you know what, Napoleon? Nah! We're going to set fire to this whole thing because then no one gets no sugar from us that we make for y'all. And that really pertains to history. Like, growing up here in Australia as a Black person, especially when I look at my baby pictures, I look like I was born fed up. I look like I was angry. I've been angry for a very long time. Inside, it's not healthy to do that. It does bad things to you, but it's also good to understand that anger is your soul letting you know that you don't like something, and anger is something to act upon, not to act out. I called it M'ap Boule, and also the fact that in Haiti, like literally it's like sak passe, which is like hello, how are you? And your answers can be either M'ap Boule with an M or a N'ap Boule. M'ap Boule with an M is I'm on fire. N'ap Boule with an N is we're on fire. And that's a call out to our ancestors who set this shit on fire to make sure that we were free. So that, but also to be like, I'm good, I'm strong, I'm here, I'm surviving, I'm doing it. That's what that means. And so the show for me, which is a play with songs, because I can't write something and not sing, I can't help myself. So the play is about that. It's about, a little girl born in Australia, and then her father and her ancestors letting her know that she's a warrior, and then how the heck did I get to this point? So me kind of trying to describe that through a bit of song, but mostly words. And it's a shout out to my ancestors. It's a shout out to the elders, past, present, and future of this land, because without them, I would also not exist. And also just like how did I get here? Really, it's like an answer. It's like, how did Denis get here? M'ap Boule, I'm on fire. I'm a flower on fire, but I'm just getting through it and like whatever. That's really, I guess, what the show's about. It's political, it's queer, because I'm queer. It's Black, I am Black. It's like a very entertaining, slight little fuck you to anything and anyone who ever made me feel like Audrey Lorde tried to tell me who I was. So that they could have their little fantasies about my Black body and enjoy their little jungle fever moment. Really is, I guess, what M'ap Boule is in a nutshell.
I mean, I think that might be an amazing way to end our conversation. Thank you so much, Nancy. It's always a pleasure to chat and to listen to you speak about all the different things. Thank you to Nida for inviting us. And thank you to everyone who asked questions and everyone who is listening live and will listen into the future. And we hope to see you all on the other side of the screen. Nancy's work will be streamed on September 21st this year. And as you can tell, it's not to be missed.
Can I just add something? Because I'm just reading the question you put in there. Do you think it's important to have healing and open conversations between staff and students with NIDA about BLM? What do we do as students? If we feel pushback and discomfort for these open conversations, are they important? I think, okay, I just want to quickly answer that. I think that's a great idea. You should absolutely have healing and open conversations between staff and students within NIDA about Black Lives Matter, for sure. And in order to keep it a safe and open space, you should have a mediator, maybe two, one who is of color, one who is not, who both understand the who understand what white fragility is. I think before you even have that healing conversation, or white people, especially the staff in the room and white students, you need to understand what white fragility is and how you definitely have it. Yeah. You definitely do it, but also really privileged people of color have it in them, and we'll have that discussion another time. But healing is important. Healing is the best. Definitely have that conversation. Have a media in there, have a psychologist or a counselor present so people can talk about it, write things in your diary. Yes, have a healing is definitely the tip of 2020 onwards.
Yeah.
Heal all together. Just wanted to answer that before.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you did, because I asked it in a different way. And I think there's conversations happening, as far as I understand, and UTP will be part of those conversations in the future, which is really exciting. So yeah, thanks Nancy, and thanks everybody, and we'll see you all soon on the other side.
See you all soon, 21st of September, M'ap Boule, UTP, yeah. Bye.
Bye.